in particular, we had our math professor, Dr. Frazier, was probably one of the most influential professors that we actually had at Prairie View. Pretty well known, and he was just a guy. I mean, he would be teaching math one second, and then he's giving you a life lesson the next second, right? And one thing that he would always tell us all the time, he would always say, you got to cultivate young minds. You got to cultivate young minds, right? And so cultivating young minds, what I interpreted from that was the knowledge that he's imparting on us, right? We have to take that knowledge, understand it. We have to excel with it. We have to go out to these jobs. We have to perform well. And then we have to go and teach other people how to do the same thing. We got to reach back, put ourselves in a position in order to lift people coming behind us to continue to push them down the pipeline.
Hey, what's going on? You guys are now locked in again with the Lion and the Lambo podcast, and I am Lionel Mosby Jr., your host. Of course, you know you can find us everywhere, streaming on every place that you can find streaming podcasts, right? And also you can catch us on YouTube for the visual experience. And today, man, let me tell you, I'm so excited to have my actual, this is not just people that's doing it big, right? It's like, but these are people I know, you know?
Right.
This is people that I've come up with, you know what I'm saying? That's doing it big all the way from the great and illustrious Prairie View A&M University up to this point in time. We've been rocking out, man. I've stayed with one of these individuals, you know what I'm saying? I know how he lives, you know what I mean? We all have been rocking with each other through the ups and downs. They can tell you stories about me. I can tell you stories about them. We're not going to get into all that, though, right? But, man, I got my boy Dedrick, Dalcour, and Cecil Shy Jr. on the podcast today. Finally, I'm so excited. Right? What's going on, y'all? What's going on? How y'all been? What are y'all feeling like?
Man, I'm out here chilling, man. Chilling. Just daily grind, man. Same old, same old.
How you doing,
man? Same here, man. Blessed, man. Just happy to be here, man. Happy to be with the bros once again. So many years removed from college, but still a strong knit community. So that's cool, man.
That's awesome, man.
I'm out here feeling like I'm on like Sway in the Morning or Funk Flex right now or something. Feel me? I might bust a freestyle or something one time, you know? A gospel rap, though. Gospel rap.
Gospel rap, Lambo. Yeah. Lion and Lambo. Lion and Lambo. Hey, keep it gospel, you feel me?
Keep it gospel, not gangster. You feel me?
Keep it gospel, you know what I'm saying? But hey, you know, it's so funny. See, you know, I can tell the real stories, you know what I mean? Because my guys came on here and told me, like, I feel the honor and respect. Like, I feel the honor and respect, but I also feel away because the A said, hey, we're going to do the podcast because somebody else approached them to do a podcast. But they know I approached them from 4 months ago and said, look, y'all need to get locked in on the podcast. So I don't know. Y'all let me know if I should feel away, if I should feel honored. Like, I'm kind of in the middle right now. I feel kind of mixed, you know what I'm saying?
Look, blame our head, not our heart. Okay. And clearly with us getting these requests, it's like, all right, clearly this is a thing that we're gonna have to start doing. And we gotta take it from who's number one on the waiting list.
That's facts.
Absolutely.
That's facts.
So it's like, it's not possible. It's impossible for us to do any other podcast before we do Lion and Lambo podcast first. That's just the way it
finally taking a step out of it. It was a catalyst for stepping out on faith. So, you know, hey, here we are.
Okay, that's what it is.
Ain't no telling when you're gonna get us again.
Hey, well, that is facts. But what I will say is what this shows is that I know how to prognosticate. Okay, I can see good investments. You know what I'm saying? That's what I feel that this shows. I saw where this was headed, and I tried to grab hold of it early on. So for the listeners out there, just understand You know, when I say something, it's meaning behind it.
Yeah,
But
man.
but
You're
no, man,
definitely ahead of the curve.
yeah, ahead of the curve, man. So I appreciate it, man. I'm really gonna love getting into you guys' story and for other people to be able to hear and resonate to see, where you guys have walked from all the way to where you are now in your entrepreneurial journey. But the first question I always ask every guest, right, is what has been your biggest win as an entrepreneur so far? What would you say that is? And I know, we got two individuals on, so, each one of your biggest win, it may be different, right? So for each of you, what do you say your biggest win has been so far?
Honestly, man, I gotta say, Cecil and I have been at this for a long time, like a long time, like over 10 years, a long time.
Right.
And I think that recently in the last few months, we finally got to the point to where we actually answered the call and we actually jumped out on faith. And so to me, I feel like that's the biggest win. In my opinion, I think that we're actually seeing the effects and the impact of making that decision, of actually taking that leap of faith, of actually answering that call that we know that we have. So yeah, man, I think that's our biggest win. And we'll kind of get more specifically around what that was, but just in the general sense, is really answering the call and taking that leap.
Hey, that's awesome. I kind of feel I hear some feedback, I think, on one of you guys. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I kind of hear a little feedback. But Cecil, what has been your biggest win to date, you would say?
Man, I had to concur with my brother, man. This past year, I'd say about 6 months have been just a period of wins. And I'm not meaning financially at this point. A period of wins spiritually, man. Just seeing and being able to experience what it's like to be like Noah building the boat, right? And it's like everybody looking like, where the rain at? Why you building the boat? And he's like, it's gonna rain one day. Like it.
Right.
That is exactly how I think we have both felt over the past 6 months, because we've posted flyers, solicited for people to come out to these events, and it's kind of like, man, nobody knows who we are. We don't know if anybody's going to come, but we're going to show up. We're going to be there at the time the flyer says. And, week after week after week, it'd be empty house, but that's okay. Eventually the Lord provided. So, just taking that step of faith, like Dedrick was saying earlier, has been definitely the biggest win, because I think that gave us, just the energy we needed just to continue moving forward. And it also, to me, it gave us the confirmation that this is what the Lord's purpose was for us. And this is what we have to be good stewards of, First Peter 4, being good stewards of various gifts. Like, this is our gift. This is where he wants us to be. So now we can really lock in and push this thing through. So,
wow.
Yeah, man.
That's amazing, though. And it's so interesting, though, because when you think about the fact that you guys had to, like you say, take a step out on faith, and then God started to confirm those things. I always think about the Israelites. God said he asked for them to put their foot in the water first before he then separated the sea. And so it was an act of faith first of them moving forward in that. And then God then responded to their faith. And even in the midst of you saying, well, we didn't even know, because we had to have faith. We didn't know whether anybody would come to these events. We didn't know if anybody was going to show up, but we had to show up on time and be ready as if the whole room was going to be filled, even though nobody showed up, right? And time after time, until, guess what? You didn't quit, you didn't give up, but then it came to fruition. And I think that's something important for all of us as entrepreneurs to remember, is that we have to continue to push forward. We have to look at it and say, I'm moving forward in faith, and it's going to be at this end point at some point, even though it may not be that now, right? And so, man, I appreciate you guys sharing that for so many people that's out there and that's looking to get started now. But I want to go back and get an understanding, because you guys have a partnership, and it's really interesting when you have partnerships of how these partnerships start, how they're actually generated. So can you guys kind of just give us an understanding of how did you guys start to come together? What did you first meet and how did y'all start to, you know, draw together to be at the point where now you guys are actually, you know, in business together?
Well, so what I can tell you is we start off as the opposite of partners.
What you mean?
We were opponents battling for the number one spot. Okay. So we both started in the engineering program back at Prairie View in 2005 in the summer. So it was a program called the STEM program. And so that's where a bunch of students come in from everywhere, in essence, that are going to be starting in engineering. And they kind of give you a little bit of a head start. So you actually take some classes during the summertime. And what you notice is it gets a little bit competitive. Well, I'm a competitive dude. So, you know, I'm one of the ones flying high, right? And then you got this guy over here. I look back, he back here trying to hang with me, right? So really from the very beginning, it's just always been a battle in every single class. It didn't matter what it was, right? Literally, it did not matter. We're engineering majors. We're competing in speech class. Speech. It did not matter what it was. Like, we going at it in everything, right? I will admit, he might have got me in speech. That's the only defeat that I'll admit. But that's it. Everything else I had him. But yeah, man. So that's kind of
so hold on. Did you guys know that y'all were competing though? Was it like an actual thing that, or was it kind of just a figuring out of, man, hold on, he also got this grade? Like, oh no, I can't let him get that. Was it kind of a silent thing, or was it kind of a very well-known out in the front thing?
Boss, 100%. Everybody knew. Everybody was in this thing, and it was kind of egged on to some degree by the professors, right? Because when the professors would grade the tests and different things, they would hand the test out in front of everybody, like one by one. So they were calling out who got the highest grade. You know what I mean? And it's so funny that I remember during the craziest thing, man. All throughout the classes that we all had together, when it came down to take a test, there was one thing that you would listen for as you were taking the test. And you know what that thing was?
What?
Who threw their pencil down on the desk first? Because that let everybody know you're not the first one finished. So just imagine. Just imagine. I mean, literally, I distinctly remember one time we were taking the test, and I can't remember who finished first. It wasn't me. But I remember hearing that noise, and the whole class went, oh, man. The whole class in the middle of the test was like,
wow,
upset that they were not the first ones done. But anyway, so that's kind of how things started. Very competitive initially. And, you know, like I said, we competed in every class. Even in history class, I remember us being in the room, studying history together on the weekends when everybody else in the UC or in the freshman dorms are all outside having a great time hanging out. We looking out the window at everybody just having fun, and we in there reading about Sir Francis Drake and what's going on in Europe back in the 1600s or whatever the case may be. So, I mean, so that's just how we were, and that's how we were built. So even though we were competing against each other, we also recognized that there was a commonality there. There was a similarity there, right? And one day we were in chemistry 2, I believe, during the summertime. And of course, we just got a test back, and there was something on the test we didn't agree with that the teacher marked wrong that we felt like was right. And so it's like, I don't care if I got an A or not, we got to have a conversation because I came to win at all costs. Right. So we're hanging out at the teacher's office after class, and one of our classmates walks up. Her name is Melissa, and she walked up, and in so many words, she ended up telling us that, you know, since we're both smart, we should start a tutoring company, and we should call it ShyCour, because Cecil's last name is Shy, my last name is Dalcour. She was like, we should call it ShyCour, and literally, that is how it all began. Like that was the beginning of it.
She randomly just walked up to y'all and said this.
Yes, sir.
This can't be made up. In your mind, picture 2 students at PV sitting on the floor outside of the professor's office. You know, it's summertime, and we sitting there just going through problems, and she just so happened to be passing. And literally, yes, that's definitely how it started.
Wow. It's like God ordained that moment, you know what I mean, in time for that to happen. It's so interesting because you guys didn't even come up with the name. It's like somebody just, you know what?
Right.
Y'all should have a company called ShyCour. You know, were y'all at all even thinking about tutoring or doing those things at this time?
Well, I mean, we had already been, I think at this time we had already been tutors for the program. So we were well known as, you know, campus tutors. And then like we were if you have problems, go talk to Dedrick and Cecil. And, you know, we'd even have sessions in conference rooms at PV where people just come in and bring your questions. And we just on the board, jamming. Like, you know, we in the class with them, but we up there teaching, you know, we'll go learn it, then we'll come teach them what we learned.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so like we were, you know, the de facto tutors of the school anyway, kind of thing. But I don't even think we were thinking from a business perspective at the time. At the time, we were just trying to run. You know, we had a mission to show how good, you know, brothers could be, you know, in math and in engineering, you know, any opportunity we had to compete, whether it was with each other or other schools. I mean, we jumped at it, you know, so it was just kind of what we did. Right. So it was funny that I don't think we really didn't have a business mindset at that point.
I got you. Okay. So that's why when she mentioned that to you about starting a company, like starting an actual business, doing what y'all are doing, she must have then saw that y'all was doing it so well then for her to like make that type of, you know what I mean? Like that type of comment about it though. Y'all really must have been jamming it out for real hard. Now I'm interested though, because it seemed like both of you came from a background already where you were academically inclined, right? Like I'm sure in high school, you guys, you know, top of your class and things like that, right? It seemed that you came into Prairie View, you know, already excelling academically. But my question is, what effect did the environment at Prairie View with the professors, for example, that you talked about, help to take that and fuel y'all to the next level? Because it seems like y'all mentioned these little things that were going on in the classroom at Prairie View, right, with the professors that kind of even brought that even competitive nature out, right? But also a nature to excel at a different level, right? I mean, how did kind of being in an environment like that help y'all to seem to excel? And then I guess the question is, off of that, what is missing from individuals' environments, right, that needs to be there for them to excel academically? I hope that question makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. I would say initially when we first started, I feel like the environment was just one where the professors wanted to just make sure it was fun, right? We were just coming in from high school. We were all in a new place. You know, we're all around new people that are like-minded, right? And so I feel like it was more of a fun type of atmosphere, and they did create that competitive component, right? But I think over time, at least for me, what I eventually started to get from the professors was that we have a responsibility as well, right? And we have a responsibility to do two things. We have a responsibility to be as good as we can be at what it is that we're doing, right? And we also have a responsibility after we develop those skills, right? We reach back and we use our talents to help the folks coming behind us, right? And so those were some of the major things that I feel like I acquired from our professors. In particular, we had our math professor, Dr. Frazier, was probably one of the most influential professors that we actually had at Prairie View. Pretty well known, and he was just a guy. I mean, he would be teaching math one second and then he's giving you a life lesson the next second, right? And one thing that he would always tell us all the time, he would always say, you got to cultivate young minds. You got to cultivate young minds, right? And so cultivating young minds, what I interpreted from that was the knowledge that he's imparting on us, right? We have to take that knowledge, understand it. We have to excel with it. We have to go out to these jobs. We have to perform well. And then we have to go and teach other people how to do the same thing. We got to reach back, put ourselves in a position in order to lift people coming behind us to continue to push them down the pipeline, right? And so to your question where you talked about what's missing, what I think is that a lot of students don't necessarily feel that responsibility. They don't feel that cultural responsibility that they have, to where it's like they have a purpose. Like there's a reason why you're here, right? And whatever it is, the gifts and the talents that you have, there are people in the world that need that from you, right? You have something to offer and you have a purpose on this earth. And so I think a lot of students don't really feel that. They're not really taught that necessarily. And so I think that's one of the major things that's missing from the classroom and just in general in a lot of young people's lives today.
That makes sense. I don't know, Cecil, if you had anything on that as well.
I mean, he captured it real well. And actually, those elements that are missing is wrapped up in sort of in our mission statement. Our goal, our mission is to help individuals build endurance, practice discipline, and take ownership of their education. And they'll use the tools that we teach them to fulfill their ultimate purpose in life, whether that's STEM, history, whatever, ministry, whatever it is that you seek to put your mind to. You have to have those three elements. You have to have endurance, you got to have discipline, and you got to take ownership and responsibility. And that's what Dr. Frazier and Dr. Kirby, through that STEM program, that's what they did for us. We were up at 6 a.m. starting math problems. That right there was the epitome of discipline coming straight out of high school.
Right.
And we were solving problems all day. I remember I was like, man, I've already taken Cal 2. I've already taken this class. They took us all the way back to algebra. And we had to practice algebra all throughout the summer, all day long, every day. So what that did was build that endurance. That's that endurance we talked about. It got to the part where, doing positive, negatives, multiplicatives, inverses, all of that became second nature. Right. And we're using our own flavor on it as well. That's something that Dr. Frazier did a lot. He brought his culture into the classroom. However he talked outside of the classroom, that's exactly how he talked in the classroom. Whatever he learned at church that Sunday, he talked about it in the classroom. Now, I'm not sure you can do it the way he was doing it in this day and age, but he was talking about Jesus. He was talking about farmlands, all kinds of stuff. And so it's just amazing how he was able to sort of intertwine his faith system in with his lesson plan. And I think the culmination of all that just really created a different experience for us. Another thing he always used to say was, you got to have high morals and high standards.
Right.
So, those two things, he used those two things and kind of intertwined it with the mathematics lesson. So it was almost like you wasn't really coming to a math class anymore. You was coming to watch the show. You was coming to watch the Dr. Frazier show. And you wanted to be a part of that show. And only those who were performing, no, I take that back. Either you're performing great or you're not performing at all. Those are the two characters that's going to be a part of that show.
Right.
Because he's going to call you out, in the classroom. So I think that creating that environment, all of that is what we try to embody. That's what ShyCour tries to embody. That's what we learn. That's what we feel that classrooms now need. Or just learn. It didn't even have to be a classroom setting, but just in the learning setting. You know what I'm saying? You need those elements. So.
Right. Those are good points that y'all bring out, right, man? And you can see the influence, the impact that somebody like a Dr. Frazier even had on y'all that we're talking about years later that you still remember to a T, the exact phrases, the exact wordings, the lessons, the illustrations, right? And like you said, it's because he brought his culture, he brought lessons that he was learning on the outside in the real world into the classroom. And I think that's when I look at you guys and what y'all are doing, for me on the outside looking in, that's how I see it as well with you, right? I see like, wow, it's important for you to have, for us, especially in the Black community, to have this representation of us, right, in the classroom, of us in the learning environment, to make learning one fun, but to also not just to make it cool, but to make it where it's like, this is just what we do. This is a part of us, right? This is how we get down, right? You know what I'm saying? And it's not even from a sense of like, oh, you got to be 2 times better than the other individual necessarily, but no, we're good because we're good. We're excellent because we're excellent. Like that's just what we do, right? And having kids that come from maybe a place where they didn't have that in their environment, they didn't have that in their home life, is so important, right? You know what I mean? To have an opportunity to have that around them, right? You know what I mean?
I think one other thing I wanted to say that just in honor of Dr. Frazier is another thing that we actually continue to talk about today that drives us. So Dr. Frazier, he actually passed away a few years ago, but while we were still in school, this was after we were done taking his math classes. He actually called me and Cecil to his office and he gave us a commission, if you will. And what he told us was, he said, we have to keep this thing going, right? And it's funny because he didn't really have to go into detail around what he meant by that. I think Cecil and I we just knew what it was that he was talking about. And so whenever we get to a point, we feel like we're getting frustrated, or we feel like, we thinking about quitting and hanging up the towel and just turning everything in and turning the light off. We always think about what Dr. Frazier told us. We got to keep this thing going. So I just wanted to mention that as well, because that's something that continues to drive us today.
Wow. That's important. I think that bodes well to show why there's something with responsibility, right? There's something with, carrying a mantle, right? There's something with, taking the place of another individual that has been doing something great, or to finish a calling that has been started. These type of, thought processes, right? And I feel like that's lost a lot right nowadays, that it's like everybody, not just youth, but even adults, right? It's like the complete mindset of getting around responsibility, right? Like, I see this thing needs to be done. I see that, hey, this particular area, there's things here that needs to be complete, right? I'm in the real estate field. There's an issue with affordable housing. There is an issue with, our community being pushed out of their areas because they don't know and understand the importance of holding on to real estate and things like this. Well, instead of, being the one to say, I'm going to take on that brunt of that work, right? To even seek to make a dent in that, to say, well, somebody will do it, right? I see it's a problem. But to take responsibility puts you in a different stratosphere, really, right? It calls you to stretch more. And I even believe, like, when there's I remember reading this article about, men that are married versus men that are not. And they were talking about how men that are married have better health, right? They're more successful at their jobs and their careers. They make more money. And I'm like, it makes perfect sense, though, because when you have responsibility, right? When you have something put on your shoulder, you rise to the cause, right? And so what you're saying there that Dr. Frazier passed on to y'all is he gave y'all something that would cause y'all to continue to rise to the call, right? So for us, even in positions of responsibility or positions of authority, a lot of times, right, we gotta stop allowing, people to not have responsibility or not have a weight placed on them, because without putting a weight on them, we don't actually help them to get stronger, right? Or to do more for themselves and their community. We actually hurt them from being able to do probably all that God has called them to do in the first place.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Excellent.
So, I know you guys talked about this. Dr. Frazier and other people at Prairie View made learning fun, right? And that's something key around what you guys are seeking to do when it comes to ShyCour Tutoring, right? You guys are seeking to make learning fun. What was the process, though? Because you guys went through many years of tutoring individuals, right? Off and on, here and there. What was it that helped you what did you learn that you started to implement, that you started to see, okay, this is how we can bring this level of fun into the learning environment, right, into the classroom?
So you want to take that one? Talk about how we came up with fun and all that.
Sure. So I'll probably be remiss if I didn't start off saying that it kind of started with me and my personal head back in homeschool. You know, shout out to Kids of Tomorrow Homeschool. My mother, Carla Shy, my pops, Cecil Shy Sr. Got to give them a shout out for what they instilled in us as young kids. Our motto was Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. We were probably the only homeschoolers with a school song. I am proud to be. So, we had a whole school song. My parents were educators, so our room was decorated to the T. I mean, you thought you were actually in school. And I remember we have a picture of me at about 6 years old or so. And the board in my room, because I had my board for learning and stuff was in my room and my ABCs. And on the wall, it says learning is fun. And that's what I associated learning with over all those years. And there was never any doubt in my mind about whether I can do it, because, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me was drilled in our heads, all throughout elementary through middle school. So fast forward to meeting D, and we're talking about, how can we make this thing fun? What can we do? And so we sat in my dorm room with some notebooks and was like, let's write down how we learn. And we said, we're going to take it from top to bottom, the way I think, what I do, because we were interested in each other's strategies at the time. We was like, how are you doing what you do? How you do what you do? So we was getting this. So, I was big on the big picture. The vision of what the author was trying to say, getting familiar, right, with what's going on. And if I could just understand that first section of any topic where he's introducing the theory, familiarizing myself with that, I was good. Dedrick was very structural. It's all about what problems do we need to be practicing, and he rehearses them bad boys over and over and over and over and over again. So he developed his understanding in his mind. His understanding was deep in terms of how to solve problems because he practiced a lot. I have to admit, some tests I took, I never really practiced any problems. I just was so deep into the theory and familiarizing myself with what was going on that I could apply that theory to different things. Dedrick was very disciplined at making sure he practiced those. So he was just jamming through problems very quickly and very succinctly, right? And then there was this element that we always talked to each other about what we learned. So there was this what we call notification going on, and so once we took those three elements of how we learn, we attached letters to them, and it just so happened to spell the word fun. Familiarize, understand, notify. And we said these are the three elements of learning. Familiarize, read and take notes, understand, use and apply, notify, teach someone else. And we was like, oh, we got to write that down. We got to write that down. That's it. So we had we were also teaching, I think I was taking a psychology class with Dr. Veda Brown. And she was challenging us in the class to come up with just creative ways of learning, making it fun, making it more engaging. So at that same time, we were also tutors at the time. I feel like we was always tutors. We was campus tutors at the time. And we were developing a proposal to an HBCU Up conference called the STEM Cognitive Developmental Tutoring Method. And we started like changing the desk around in the room into a circle, trying different groups of pair the kids together to see if they'd be more engaged, bringing about more real life examples, to try to make it more exciting, coupled with this whole idea behind the fun method, right? And we were really using the fun as a play on words, to kind of just change the psyche around learning and study. Instead of saying study, well, let's apply the fun method. Oh, what's the fun method? And then you in a sense end up studying, but that's how we approached making learning fun, right? By changing the psyche around, it's just this grueling, I read and I got. But when we break it down into 3 steps like that, And what you actually find by the time you get the notification and you teach it to someone else is once you know something, once you've learned it, once you've understood it, it actually is fun to solve problems.
Yeah.
When you're able to solve them. The only thing that really makes learning not fun is when you can't get through the whole process to the point to where you can actually solve a problem. I've seen no one solve a problem and get mad that they solved it. I haven't seen that yet. So it's what you get after going through that process that in effect makes the learning fun. And we try to get students to make the connection with that. Saying, hey, look, once you get through this process, you will see the fun in it, right? And so, I hopefully I didn't miss too much there, D. That's kind of what I remember in terms of how we came up with that.
No, that was perfect.
Nah, that's dope. I love the fact that you said that you guys were able to kind of even bring this out at school while y'all were there, like to really have a chance to implement these things. And I think that's something that makes college what college should be, right? An incubator for ideas, right? And if somebody's kind of going through college, even right now, and you're not able to incubate these ideas, or you're not able to practice and try stuff different, you got to go in and shake it up because you're missing a prime opportunity to come up with something fun, like this, right? That can really change the world and change lives, right? And impact people. Did you guys win anything with the HBCU Up Conference, by the way? Because that's another thing that's on my head. Like, did y'all actually, Like, I did you guys place or anything or no?
The fact that I don't remember tells me that probably not.
Okay, I was just thinking. I was like, I know you said you're doing it for, this conference, right? But
yeah, I can't even remember if it was a competition or not. It may have been. Honestly, I can't remember, to be honest.
So now, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say, I said if we didn't have a photo of us actually standing in front of our poster, I might have not remembered as well myself.
Right.
But yeah.
And you guys have done so much, that it's like it may not. Sometimes it just comes back when it comes back. A lot of times, we've been through so many things in life at this point. But now you guys took this fun, familiarize, understand, notify, which. When I remember, right, being in school around this time when you guys were generating these things, because I remember, I think this may have been around the time me and Cecil, we were roommates, right?
Yeah, we were roommates.
I remember.
I used to run by you.
I remember Cecil coming in, and I think he was trying to teach me something with derivatives or something crazy. I don't know, something like that, right? But you was using the method to try to say, okay, do this first, then do this to do this, because he's like, y'all was like, really trying to put it into practice. But all I remember when you told me was thinking like, dang, that's fire, because I started connecting it with the sanctuary, right, in the scriptures. And I remember I told you, I was like, honestly, that makes certain sense, because I think about that when I think about, okay, you got the word, you got to read the word, right? You bring prayer into it, because prayer is like when you're seeking to understand the word that you're reading, right? Because it's only the spirit that's actually the teacher, you know what I'm saying? And then you got being the light of the world, right? You go out and you share. And during this time, I just remember, like, the reason I was learning so much was because I was actually going and teaching other people or talking to other people so much about what I was learning. And that's why I resonated so much with them. I'm like, dang, this is so true. That's very fire. Like, I never thought about it in that way, right? To put it into a concept or a method. But here my friends were creating something right in front of me. But what was it that drove you guys to not just learn this and say, man, we need to write that down? That's on point to then say, we need to maybe take this to the U.S. Patent Office, right? And actually like protect this. Like what led y'all to go in that direction and to actually, solidify this method of learning in stone?
Well, I would say that one thing was over time we found that the method was proven, right? It was absolute positive proof that the method really does work. I would also say that, over time, we would even hear other different little sayings that people have that are similar to the steps for the fun method as well. But nobody ever packaged it the way that we packaged it using fun as the acronym for it. And so with us understanding, again, that we have the responsibility to go out and share this information and try to show and put this in front of as many people as we can, we also know that everybody out there in the world is not, they don't have great intentions, right? And so what we felt like we needed to do was to protect what it was that the Lord gave us to steward over. And so that was part of the reason why we decided to go ahead and pursue trademarks for the F.U.N. method, just to give it the protection that it needed. So when we got to a point where we were rolling it out, it would prevent people from just basically being able to steal it and just, run away with it in essence.
Right. That makes sense, right? You know what I'm saying? So because it was something that you said, right? Over the years, it had been proven time and time again. Because like you say, I think Cecil shared earlier, you guys have still been tutoring like all this time, right? You guys grew this love for not just learning, but like helping other people, helping other people to learn as well. And so you also, after a while, started to not just see, okay, what's our method of learning, but you also came to a point where it felt like, I guess you guys also asked the question of what materials or tools do we kind of use to learn as well? Because one thing that you guys have developed over time is this F.U.N.pack, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so can you guys kind of maybe describe for the listeners out there, what is the F.U.N.pack and kind of how did you come to put this together so that people can actually, again, right, make learning fun, right, and enhance their learning as well?
So you want to go?
Oh, sure, no problem. So back in our day, way back when, people used notebooks, actual notebook, pen and paper, those things before the iPads. And so we were strong believers in the notebook. We were like, but the funniest thing was Dedrick was an excellent note taker. I mean, his notes were, I've never seen him have notes that were just out of place, out of order, out of order. I was all over. Actually, I was writing on the top of the page, the side of the page, scribble, scrabble. I mean, they were virtually unreadable. I mean, I'm thinking of
listen, it wasn't virtually unreadable. It was unreadable. There was nothing virtual about that, boss.
So, I made it through the grace of God, through all those courses with those chicken scratch notes. But we started to see, though, that different people approach note-taking differently, right? But one common theme still remains the same. Your information needs to be packaged in such a way that it can be digested. And so whether or not you took notes well or not, we thought that if we had a product that could structure the notes for you, then it really wouldn't matter how you're writing it in there, because the notebook will help guide you in terms of how to digest the information, making sure you have pertinent information like the topic that y'all were talking about in class, the date that it was in class, your name, the page number. We even added a table of contents, just different little things like that to our products that make sure that the students have what we call the fundamentals of learning. And one of those components was the notebook inside of our F.U.N.pack. And then another thing that we had made was something we call the F.U.N. board, right? And so this is just basically, just imagine a whiteboard, right? It's a whiteboard that you can use to kind of take along with you if you need to jot some notes down, if you need to practice some problems. Because really, we wanted this F.U.N.pack to be a very good compatible toolkit with the F.U.N. method, right? In the F.U.N. method, in the understanding portion, we talk a lot about repetition and solving problems. Well, in your notebook, the page numbers are limited, right? The notebook may only have 50 to 100 pages. So I really wouldn't advise the student to solve the problems over and over and over and over again in their notebook. Maybe you whip out your F.U.N. board and you practice on your F.U.N. board over and over again with your marker, and then you erase and erase and erase. And when you feel like you've gotten it, you can go back over to your notebook and make notes in your notebook. So that was another part of the tool. We added markers, dry erasers in there. different things like that. But the whole idea behind the F.U.N.pack, again, was just to make sure that the students had the tools that they needed to actually be able to apply the fun method when it's time to apply it. So that was kind of what went on.
I mean, you would be surprised the number of times people show up for tutoring and they don't have nothing. Like nothing. No pen, no paper, no tablet, no markers, no crayons, nothing. I'm like, what was you planning to do? Watch a movie? Like what?
Right.
What were you planning to do?
Exactly.
And so what this does is it basically gives people the ability to bring their tools with them when they show up, right? At the end of the day, it's like you going to work, you got a job to do. And in order to do that job, you gotta bring your tools, right? You gotta bring your tools to work. And so essentially that's as Cecil was saying, that's why we went ahead and created the F.U.N.pack to provide people the tools that they needed in order to get the work done.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I remember when you guys were first talking to me about it, and I was thinking like, man, every ISD needs like this for their students. Like they need this so that they can go into school and actually have all the tools they need to actually learn to the full extent, right? To maximize. And even I think it was I don't know if it was UD or Cecil that was explaining and showing me the notebook, and you showed me how on the notebook itself you also have these spaces for marking off, okay, have you finished familiarizing yourself, right? Have you understood? You can check it off. Have you taught somebody else? Have you notified somebody else? And I just thought that was powerful, right? Because literally in this package, right, in this notebook, you guys have everything that is needed in order for somebody to actually really be able to walk through succinctly and learn, right? And the thought process behind all these things of why you guys put page numbers in there, why you added that table of contents, right? I think was so powerful, right? You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we don't think about we don't think about the background of why this stuff is here, right? We don't think about, okay, why this method is the method. We don't think about, okay, why should we go in this order or do the steps that we do? But every single one of these things is so important. And one thing that I always try to tell people is like, look, even when you're taking notes and things like that, like it needs to be orderly, right? Like, you know, like you have notes here, then you have the other thing over here. All this is from the same class, or you got multiple classes in this one thing, or you got something on the first page, but then the next thing is on the 93rd page. It's like, how can you even be straight? Like, it's like you'll get scattered brain yourself type of thing, right? Well, I mean, for you guys, that's just something that I feel, but I know you guys have kind of been in, the learning environment, right? You guys have been tutoring. What is the importance of order, right? When you're talking about studying or you're talking about learning, why is order something that is important? And that even goes down to when you talk about putting a schedule together and things of that nature.
Man, look, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. Now Cecil is a radical, okay? This man is built completely different. Like he just built different. So I'll let him say his piece. What I'm gonna say is I was how would I call it? I was a temperamental learner. All right. I had to have things perfectly right. My environment had to be right. Temperature, lighting, everything had to be perfect, or else I was gonna struggle the entire time I was trying to do my work. Right? Because I don't need my attention on, oh God, I'm so hot, or oh God, I really wish I could have that hamburger and that milkshake right now because I'm so hungry, right? I don't want to be worried about that kind of stuff. Look, don't be laughing because I look like I done had a couple of hamburgers already today. Whatever. Y'all so disrespectful, man.
I wasn't laughing because of that in the first place.
Listen, stay focused. Stay focused. I'm going somewhere with this thing. Okay. But So what ends up happening is in the studying and in the learning process, when you're looking at that book, you're writing down those notes, right? And you start working those problems. Oftentimes you get to a point to where you're like stuck, right? And it's easier to go back and look at your notes and review as opposed to oftentimes going back in the book to review, okay? Because when you take your notes, you kind of write down summaries of information. You write things down in words that you can understand. You write things down in ways that make sense to you. And so it's easier to go back and look at your notes. Well, if your notes frustrate you to the point to where you don't even want to look at them anymore, it impedes the learning process. It impedes you being able to study effectively, right? If I'm working problems, like Cecil said, I would work problems multiple times, okay? So as I'm working out a problem and I get stuck, I think to myself, I'm like, man, I just did this problem. Let me go back and see what the steps were. Well, if my stuff is in order, I can go back and see very easily, oh, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do next. But if my problem is all over the place, I don't even know where the beginning of the problem is at. I'm like, okay, where did I go from here? And at that point, you just basically have cratered the thought process. You've cratered the learning process in that moment. So that's part of the reason why it's so important for me to have organized notes, because it will help you in the learning process. When you have to go back and you have to review, it just helps you in that process. Now, like I said, Cecil is totally different. The man already said that his stuff was chicken scratch, so he had a whole different method of how he made it happen.
I did not see the value until literally I got my PhD. Literally, I didn't see the value of order holistically until I did that. To set the stage, it has to begin in high school when I first transitioned from homeschool to public school. You got to remember, in homeschool, the structure is a little bit more independent. You can kind of, my parents kept it structured like school, but you still kind of at home and you can kind of like, all right, I'll do this like at 5 in the morning and then I'll do this, at 6 and 7. So you kind of had a little more wiggle room. So it wasn't as much structure when we were younger, as per se when I went to high school, public school. So I remember my dad enrolling me and he says, hey, I know you want to do sports. I played basketball, ran track, cross country. Say, but you're going to be in all AP classes as well. Ooh. And so I was in all AP classes in high school. I was running track, cross country, played basketball for 2 years. And so it was like my life was literally a whirlwind all the time. And it was really God's grace in terms of me being able to remember information pretty well. I could just see it once or twice and I could understand what the teacher was basically saying, the theory. And so I could just apply those, without having to study too much. So I was able to get by, I was able to get by and do fairly well and juggle all these things. So that became my strategy. So then let's fast forward to Prairie View. I meet all these juggernauts that I didn't even know existed, like me in STEM. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, I know just as much still, but why is Mr. Dalcour over here consistently getting 100s? And I was the type of student where I get 90s, here and there. And then by finals, I'll pop 120 or something, because it took me that long to get my notes together, the whole semester to finally get my notes organized. And I'm like, oh, that's what he was talking about. And then boom, I just let it all out in the final.
Right.
But the story that really tells it for me in terms of why order is important in your learning. I was in at Mizzou getting my PhD, and I was in this course, numerical methods, and we had, once you get to that level, you probably only have 2 tests in the whole class, and that's it. So it's like one and done. And so, I had this final and I was like, oh man, my whole grade rests on this one test. And my notes were like they used to be, and they were just all over the place. I had to stay up through the night just to get my notes together. It took about probably 9 or 10 hours. So I was like straight without stopping.
Right.
So I was like, I will never do this again. At that point, I said, I will never do this again. And I immediately started working on the fun template for the notebook. I called Dedrick. We had a video chat. I was living out in Missouri at the time. I said, hey, we got to fix this notebook situation because people like me need some structure. We need to make sure everything's in order because it took me 9 or 10 hours to get my notes in order just so I can start studying.
Wow. That wasn't even a studying. You were just writing the notes in an orderly fashion.
In an orderly fashion.
Wow.
Right? Now, by God's grace, I had the endurance to get through and do it and do well, but that's not practical, right? That's not something you can count on to do consistently, right? And so that's where the light bulb went off for me. Like, yeah, we need to really emphasize this order. You know, Dedrick got it right in this area. Like, you know, hey, absolutely. And our products need to make sure that it provides people with what they need to actually be able to do that very easy, very succinctly, you know, secondhand, and just help them train. So, you know, I know because more of a trainer, you know, a lot of our products, you know, you'll see, we don't actually intend for you to have to use them forever. I mean, you can, you know, it'd be great if you want to always use them, but they're really trainers. They're really to help discipline you to have better habits when you're jotting stuff down. You know, after a while, you may start just using a sheet of paper because you know the structure now. Right. But our products are just geared towards helping you get that order, get that structure, get that rehearsal that you need to be able to organize your learning process. So
wow, that's cool, man. It's cool because I love to see how these different things that you went on in your life, right? Different experience you had is what taught you something that you then turn around and then make your product better, right? You learn something more about how to better learn, and you turn around and put it into the product, right? And it's also important because it comes from the background that you have, right? From, like you talked about earlier, right? Coming from your community, your culture, you also putting that into it. And that's great. And so I want to get into just briefly before we close, you know, the robotics program that you guys just had, right? Out in here in Houston, Texas, right? That went super well, the super fly program. But before we do that, I also want to ask you guys about this EFT that you guys have, right? They got the NFT out too now, you know what I'm saying? They got NFTs, right? You know what I mean? And so for everybody that know about NFTs, right, in the crypto space, but you guys got something that you call EFT, right? Which goes along with this kind of order that you were kind of just discussing. And when you guys have even talked to me, right, about, you know, order and structure, even from a business standpoint, EFT is like one of these first things that you guys always love to explain to help people understand, because guess what? If you're going to learn, right, like there's some things you got to think about, right, in order to be in place. And I know, Dedrick, you mentioned it earlier about having being in a certain framework, a certain mindset, you know, having your place right. And so kind of go into a little bit on EFT and explain that to the people, because somebody out there may be studying for something right now, right, while they listen to the podcast. So explain to them what this EFT is, and how they should use it in order to better learn.
Yeah, so Cecil kind of talked about the F.U.N.pack, right? So those are physical materials that you need, or that we recommend you have, and that you use in order to have a successful study session. Okay. There are other things that you need that are not physical. Okay. And we call those things the acronym EFT. EFT stands for energy, focus, and time. All right. So energy, pretty self-explanatory. When you sit down to have a study session, it's probably not good, oftentimes, for you to do it while you're laying in a bed and it's close to your bedtime. just a thought, right? Because most likely you're going to be dozing off. You're going to wake up in the middle of the night, pencil still in your hand, frantic because you done fell asleep while you're trying to study, right? So it's one of those things where you want to make sure that you have energy when you go into a study session. So you don't want to be tired. You want to, I mean, it's best you can, right? You don't want to be tired. You want to be well rested. If you got to get you, you know, a cup of coffee or anything like that, you just do whatever you got to do to make sure when you actually sit down to have that session, that you're going to have the energy needed in order to get through the session effectively. All right. So that's the E. The F, focus. All right. I don't know how some people do it. Cecil was one of these. He was able to focus amongst the chaos. Okay. I'm not that dude. Okay. When I sit down and I study, I have to make sure my environment for me is conducive for studying. So for me, that's going to be somewhere that's quiet. That's going to be somewhere where there's not a lot of noise going on. There's not a lot of people. It's not a lot of distractions going on, right? That's going to put me in the best position to focus. So that's the thing that people have to understand for themselves is what environment do you need? What is it that you need to make sure you have in order to focus effectively? And the last thing is time. I can't tell you how many times people think they're gonna have a study session for like 5-10 minutes. What is you doing? 5-10 minutes? What you gonna get? What you gonna do? Read the title, write the title down.
That's all I need. That's all I need.
Get yourself situated, then it's time to
look
go.
at it.
Like, no. Like, so that's another thing that people, I don't know how, but it's a thing where people don't realize, like, if you really want to have a good study session, we suggest you probably need at least about 30 minutes to really kind of sit down and ingratiate yourself in the material or whatever it is that you're looking at, right? Yeah, because I've had situations where people think that they're going to study real quick right before class. And I'm like, what time the class start? Oh, it's in 15 minutes. I said, and you trying to do what? Oh, I just want to study real quick. Seriously. Look, you come over here, we could pray together that the Lord send the angels down to come fill your head up with the material. But that's gonna be about it. Study ain't gonna help you at this point. So that's what EFT is: energy, focus, and time.
Gotcha. Energy, focus, time. And I think Cecil, you was telling me about a situation one time when you were kind of, talking to a young man about studying, and you were saying that the first thing you did was actually sit him down to help him understand like how much time he actually literally had, right? Can you kind of explain that? Because I think that would also kind of show people, how this EFT is put into practice when you guys sit down with somebody to actually help them to prepare for getting ready to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So essentially, our theory is that, a lot of what makes studying hard has nothing to do with their ability to understand what's going on.
Right.
I like to say, if you know your ABC, if you can learn your ABCs, you can learn just about anything. It's all about process. So the question then now lies, well, what's the issue? Why am I not retaining stuff? Why am I not learning when I'm doing it? And a lot of times it's hard to get the right focus you need if the time that you're utilizing when you're studying has not been dedicated to just doing that. Some people may call this time blocking or, setting aside time or scheduling, you could call it what you want, but you have to consciously and very intentionally set aside certain time for your studying and your learning. And that T component of EFT is just so important because what it does is it essentially puts your mind frame in this setting where, all right, when 5 to 6 o'clock hits, that's where my mind is.
Right.
And once you have your mind focused totally on what you're doing, you will be surprised at how the information just feels like it jumps off the page. Like, and so what we try to do is help people with the process of how do I make time? And so we have this little tool, for example, we call Making Time for Fun. And so, we have this chart where you go through, you kind of write down whatever you got going on in the week. You kind of put down how much time you think it's going to take to get all that done. Then we go in and we look at, okay, now with all this information, how much time you got left to actually study. And the funniest thing is, most people, they have negative time. Most people, when they get done with that exercise, they always say, how in the world am I getting anything done? Like, by the time they add up the time that they need, it's way past the number of hours that's in the week. So it's like, it's an exercise when we start focusing in on the time part of EFT, where we help people understand the reality of just how much time it requires just to do basic things. By the time you're done eating and sleeping, I mean, you've done a large percentage of the day is eating and sleeping, you know? And so it's like, all right, then if you're working, you got that work block, at least 8 hours. Or if you're in school, you might as well just substitute the work with school. You know, you're doing 8 hours of that. So when do you actually have time to study? And when is the best time to study? You know, Dedrick talked about it may not be right before bed for you. You know, you may be rolling over into the bed every time you open that book if you don't set it at the right time of day. So if I got something very difficult that I'm trying to learn, it's getting that prime time of my day. Everything is going to get planned. 10 to 12 for me. Oh, that's my hard working, like mental, you know, something that's going to require a lot of my brain. Right. I might set aside 10 to 12 for those types of activities. And then I just fill in everything else outside of that, right? So it's taking the time to make time to study. You know, you have to do that, right? And so that's just a little bit more detail about the time part.
No, and that's important. And I think it's even important here to say that this framework that you guys have come up with, this method, is not just something for people to learn in school, right? And I know we've been kind of talking around a lot of that, right? But this is something that anybody seeking to learn anything could actually use to learn, right? Whether you're a lawyer, right? Whether you're a business owner, entrepreneur trying to learn a new product, right? Or just to come up with something service-based, whatever it is, right? Like, you can use this framework in order to do that. And I love that little making time for fun chart that you guys have, right? That's in the pack, right? Because literally you get the thing out and see it in front of you. Because me, I'm so visual, right? And so having something to see visually helps tremendously, helps a whole lot, right? And I know you guys still have the fun packs that's available, right? You know what I mean? And so anybody that's interested in actually acquiring one of these fun packs, because I know many of y'all are probably thinking as you're listening, like, man, I need that myself, or I need that for my child, right? You know, we'll have a description in the link for the video, right? Or wherever you're listening to the podcast, for you to actually go down, click that, and be able to get not just the fun pack, right? But actually, when you purchase the fun pack, they also get access to the to Learning the Fun Way ebook as well, correct?
That's right. Correct.
That's right. And that kind of breaks down a little bit more for you guys to understand the actual fun method, right? And how to apply it to your learning. Now, before we close, I know we're about to wrap up soon, right? But you guys had such an interesting program that you put on recently, right? Using the fun method, but now applying it to robotics, right? And the reason I loved it, right, being able to be a part of it, because, you know, I was able to see, man, especially for us in the African American community, a lot of youngsters, right, young kids being involved, right, in STEM programs, in robotics, right, in coding from a super young age. So can you guys kind of just give a little background about how you guys even came up with putting the program on? And also just tell us, you know, how the program went in general, because I know you guys are going to be moving forward to also continue to do this for families and for children as well.
Okay. So, you know, I got a story.
I love the stories.
Right.
The stories are great.
So, what I've learned about Cecil, he likes to sign us up for things and hype things up that don't actually exist yet.
Right.
And then he likes to come back and tell me, hey, D, I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say, but just hear me out. Just hear me out. Right? And as soon as he say that, I already know this man does signed us up for something that we do not have.
Oh, he had the conversation yet. He already agreed to something.
Boss, he already agreed to it. Oh, yeah. He got dates and everything. Dates, times. I'm like, what are you doing? Right? So I'll try to not belabor the story for too long, but this kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier. Your first question when you talked about the big win. Okay. So Cecil one day, Cecil has a son, and his son was he went to his son's soccer practice. Okay. And when he was there, he saw some of the parents, they were like huddled around, and he basically said he received the unction, okay, amen, to go and see what were these parents huddled around. And it turns out they were huddled around a cell phone. And there was a guy on the phone who was the organizer of the soccer program, right? And the parents were upset because I guess none of the workers of the program showed up that day, right? And so Cecil was just there, just kind of listening. And then he received another unction because he realized that there was not a lot of progress being made in a conversation, okay? So he got another unction, amen. And he decided to take hold of the phone, and he became the leader and the driver of the conversation to try to get to a resolution.
Right. Okay.
So
action.
Then I think a little bit after that, they must have got off the phone, and then somehow they must have got back on the phone with the guy. So Cecil tried to stay out of it a second time. He received another unction, got involved with it again, and continued to drive this thing to resolution. All right. So long story short, after all of that, now this is not him. He's not really just deciding to do this in and of himself. What he expressed to me was the Lord told him to go and like get involved with this unrelated like thing that don't have nothing to do with ShyCour, right? And thereafter, the parents started coming up to him, and they were like, "Who are you again? What's your name? What do you do?" And they start asking him all these questions, and eventually, Dr. Shy decides to tell the parents that he has a robotics program, and he's going to be having an info session on a certain day at a certain time. And if they're interested, he'll take their phone numbers and their email addresses and will contact them with further details. Okay. This was Mr. Shy. Now, I'll tell you, nothing existed at that time. There were no flyers. There were no reservations.
There was no interest meeting.
Huh?
There was no interest meeting.
There was no interest meeting. There was no presentation. I was completely and utterly unaware, right? And so as he started talking to me, though, when he was telling me the story, normally I'm the guy that's like risk averse. I don't want to jump out there and I don't have nothing yet, right? But it was something different about this story. It was like it wasn't him that got us in this situation. With him continuing to say the Lord told him to get involved, the Lord told him to do this and do that. What I came to understand was this is the Lord basically telling us, hey, it's time now, right? And once I felt that in my spirit, I totally switched gears. So it was no longer frustration that, oh, he done got us involved in something again that we ain't got nothing ready for. It was like, boss, we have to make this happen.
Right.
Like now. Like this ain't nothing to play around with, because I felt that the Lord, literally the Lord himself, was like, y'all got to get this done. And this is me creating the opportunity for y'all to go ahead and make it happen. And at that point, that's when we really kind of started building the robotics program from there. So, Cecil, you want to talk a little more about it, about what we actually got going?
Sure, man. Yeah, man. So what it ended up being was a 7-week program, 6 weeks of instruction, where we spent 1 hour a week with the students, just introducing them to two things, really. One, just robotics in and of itself, and then also introducing them to the F.U.N. method. And so, they actually used the F.U.N. method as they were learning about robotics. we took the fun method to help kind of break down the learning process from week to week to week. And then it ended with a competition. So, just full on music, awards, certificates, they had a blast. The parents were able to come and cheer them on. So it's a 7-week program, just entailing those things. Of course, they also got shirts and prizes, things like that. But just some really good introduction to kind of what robotics is. And then robotics is so multifaceted, which is, something that doesn't jump out when you see a quote unquote robot. There's the mechanics of it all, the mechanisms, you got the electronics, you got the circuitry, you got the computer programming. And so our program really focused more on the computer programming side. So, we could have, it was only so much time. So that was pretty much what we decided would be a good, healthy chunk of information for the students. And so we focused more on the programming of robots. And so that's what they learned about. They learned some vocabulary behind it, learned how to implement it. And actually, by the end of the second 7 weeks, pretty impressively, they were able to independently program their robots and actually compete.
Wow.
And so, I think the students and the parents really enjoyed that. You had some students were pretty sad that the program was ending, but we reassured them that, we would be coming back with something else. So that's kind of some of the details around the program. And we really had
awesome. That's what age was this too as well? What age group it is? And go ahead, Deech.
Okay, the age group was kindergarten to 2nd grade. So we were primarily dealing with like 3 and 4 year olds up to like 6 years old, 6, 7 years old for this particular program. But one other thing that I wanted to add to what Cecil was saying was it took a lot of work. We definitely ran into some challenges in putting a program together. There was a point where we actually caught COVID in the midst of trying to put this together, and so I was down for a week.
Wow.
And Cecil continued to drive and make sure everything was still happening and we were still making progress during that time while I was down. And I found out while I was down, he actually got sick as well. Right. So it was kind of crazy that, in the midst of all of the obstacles, in the midst of all the things that tried to come in the way to deter us from actually getting a program off the ground, we were fortunate to be able to get it off the ground, and it's been received really well. We actually have parents that were asking, okay, my kid is really interested in this. What's next? What's the next step? What's the next phase? Right. So now we're starting to understand that there's really a demand. We're starting to understand that this is where our purpose is at. This is what we're here for. This is what we're here to do. Right. And opportunities are being created, so much so that we've been to different events in the community where we've set up booths and tables and what have you. We had the robots out there. We engaged with different community leaders to the point to where they're wanting to partner with us to create programming for different areas around the community now. So we're at the point now where it's like this thing is really starting to build some momentum, and it's only by God's grace, man. It's only by God's grace. And to really continue in this effort, we full well understand that we're gonna have to continue to lean on God to help us with this process. So,
gotcha.
That's just to kind of bring it back full circle to the big win. Stepping out on faith is really starting to create a lot of opportunities to continue to build and continue to grow and continue to fill that pipeline for the students coming behind us.
Right. And so are you guys looking for investors, by the way? Because if you are,
hey, you'll be second on the list. I think you're gonna be second on the list.
We're gonna have to talk about that offline. I don't like the second. I don't like the second thing. You know what I'm saying? But it's so awesome, man. And I know you guys got a lot more planning and coming out, right? And so, again, right, for everybody that's interested, that's hearing this program, Don't know when you're going to be hearing this, right? But sometime throughout the year or in the summer, just look at the link, right? We'll have the link to how you get in contact with Cecil and Dedrick, and to be able to connect your kid with this great robotics program. I know that there's a lot more things coming out too. So by the time you're listening to it, there may be even other things for you to be able to connect with them on in these different spaces, right? You know what I'm saying? So definitely stay tuned. We don't let cats out the bag too early. You feel me? You know what I'm saying? We don't want Dedrick to be, we don't want Dedrick to have a seizure right now. You know what I'm saying? By sharing too much. But man, I appreciate you guys for coming on, man, the podcast, and really sharing your story, your background, sharing about what you guys got going on. I know what you guys have and what you're doing is going to impact so many people in the community, so many people, right, who really feel like they can't learn, right? Who feel like, man, I can't do this particular thing, right? And so I just want you guys, as we close, to leave some encouragement for those people who are in that mindset or that thought process, either who say, you know what, I don't know if I can learn this thing, or even somebody who may be in y'all's position, maybe that you were in, say, 6 months ago, that said, man, I got these big plans in my mind, on my heart, but I don't feel like I can do it, right? Give them some encouragement, right, that will help them to step out on faith. So I want y'all to close, kind of giving some encouragement to those individuals. But I'm gonna just take a brief moment just to talk about a program that we have coming up, right? This is the Engineer Your Vision Challenge, the Engineer Your Vision Challenge for many entrepreneurs throughout the world, for many people who are aspiring to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. One of the things that I have found is that many individuals do not have an idea where they are going at all. They have a vision that is lacking. They don't have a clear focus, like we talked about in EFT, right? They don't have a clear focus, and guess what? Because they have no clear focus, they can't make a plan to actually accomplish a vision that they do not have in place. And so we have the Engineer Your Vision Challenge. This is a challenge that's going to help you to take this thing out your head, to make it clear what it is that you are going after, what you're trying to attack and accomplish. And not only that, but help you to actually put a succinct plan together to go about accomplishing that vision, right? And so if you're somebody who is in that framework, you say, you know what, that's me, right? I'm just doing this thing, then doing that thing, then turn around and doing another thing. I have no idea where I'm trying to go. I kind of know the field I want to be in, the industry I want to be in, but I don't know what my goal is. I'm not focused. Well, guess what? This is exactly for you. So go to engineeryourvisionchallenge.com. That's engineeryourvisionchallenge.com. Sign up for the challenge, right? And let's get your vision on the ground so you can get up and running. Because just like the scripture says, right? Write the vision, make it plain, that he may run who reads it. So let's get you running. All right. So Cecil, Dedrick, man, we're just closing out of this episode of the Lambo podcast. So give some encouragement to those out there who say, you know what, maybe I don't feel like I can learn, or those individuals who may be in your position that you were in a couple months ago, who may have even a fear of jumping out in faith into the thing that they really feel God pulling them in this direction, but they've yet to be able to put it out to the public to be able to bless others. And both of you guys can share too.
Yeah, man, really, really a great question. It actually causes me to think back to what Cecil, a scripture that Cecil mentioned earlier, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I think that one of the most important things in the world is believing, right? And I think that it's important for people to believe that they can, right? When people get to the point to where they believe that they can, they end up being able to achieve whatever it is that they're believing they can do. If you believe small, you're gonna manifest small. When you believe big, you manifest big, right? Wow. And so when it comes to learning, what I would say to anybody that feels like they have struggles with learning anything, the first thing that you have to focus on is believing that you can, right? Get to the point, even psych yourself out, even if you feel like you're almost lying to yourself, continue to tell yourself, I can do this. I can. Right. Believe that you can do it. And the same thing goes for anybody that's struggling with stepping out on faith. I'm gonna tell you, I was that person. I was that risk averse person, right? it took a divine experience where I literally felt like God came down and said, "Hey, Dedrick, hey, yeah, I'm creating this opportunity for you right now to do what I need for you to do to manifest my will on the earth for my people." Right?
Right.
I need you to go do what I need you to do.
Wow.
How you gonna say no to that?
Yeah.
Boss. It ain't no saying no. It's I'm making this happen, period. Right? And so when I think that even so for the people that are struggling with jumping out, understand that the Lord has placed something inside of you. The Lord has placed that thing in you, and you have a responsibility to go out and share that thing with the world in order to manifest the Lord's will on the earth. So continue to believe that you can.
Amen. See, close us out.
That's a tough act to follow, man. I concur. I mean, the only thing I would add from the faith perspective, one thing that I would say that can help kind of bring that faith into fruition is, leaning on the verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. That verse embodies so much that helps me from day to day when I am even challenged as to whether or not I can understand a new concept or whether or not I can learn this new thing that's in front of me. I have to remove myself from the equation and stop allowing myself and what I think that my capability or my capacity is to limit what it is that I can actually do. It's funny how that verse starts off with trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. So there's this idea that, don't look at your past in terms of what you think you can learn in the future. Trust in the Lord that he can bring you that knowledge, that information. You can still get through it. Another scripture I like is the wisest man knows that he knows not. It's if that's the picture of wisdom, knowing that you know not, that says something. If you're in a situation where you're trying to learn something new and you're like, I don't know what this is, the wisest man knows that he knows not. So you are wise, my friend.
Right.
So don't be afraid if things are just not making sense. That is where tools come into play, right? That is where process comes into play. So have faith, trust that you can get through, trust in the Lord that you can get through. And don't lean on, I could never understand this in the past. Yeah, that probably has little to nothing to do with it. Just press on, just keep persevering. Philippians 4:13, like Dedrick quoted earlier, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. So
man, that's wait for both of you guys to just close us out, right? That verse that you're saying as well, man. It's like God is saying, look, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. So that thought process you have about yourself, that thought process of lack that you have about you, you got to get rid of that and think about what have I placed inside of you? What have I placed in your heart and go after that? And the reality is God has placed many things in each and every one of us. Those of you listening, he's placed something inside of you. He's placed a burden on your heart. You have that passion that he's giving you. And the reality is it's just fear that is keeping you from moving forward, right? But God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. And so if you take his thoughts above your thoughts, then you can move forward. And the reality is that faith requires you to move without seeing the thing. If not, then it wouldn't be faith in the first place. So there's and we've talked about it many times throughout this podcast, as you guys have been sharing your story, that in many times, in many situations, guess what? In every situation that faith is required, right? That means you're going to have to make a step before you see something done, before you see something come manifested, right? You got to step forward. And so if you want to see the thing accomplished in your life and your experience and your business, your ministry, then realize that you got to step first before you start to see it, right? So again, thank you guys for locking in with us, man. We appreciate you, Dedrick and Cecil, man, for connecting with us. How can the people get in contact with y'all if they want to connect with you for any of these things? I know we're gonna have some links down, right, for the F.U.N.pack, links for them to connect with y'all as well for getting access to information about the robotics program, right? But if they want to get in contact directly with you guys, how can they do that?
Man, the best way to do that is going to be to visit our website, www.ShyCour.com. And on there, that's where you'll see all our information, all our contact information. So looking forward to replying back and responding to anybody that reaches out to us.
Amen, man. We'll appreciate that. And again, thank you guys for listening in and locking in with the Line and the Lambo podcast, the #1 podcast for biblical entrepreneurs. And you know, we discuss biblical entrepreneurship, impact, and true success. So when you hear this information, don't just sit on it. Go out and impact the world. Talk to y'all later.